Imagine, imagine you are sitting in Terminal 4 at O'Hare International Airport.
Oh, wow. Okay. Setting a scene right away.
Yeah, just picture it for a second. The snow is like coming down in absolute sheets outside those massive glass windows.
Right. Classic Chicago winter.
Exactly. And you look up at the departure board and you see that glowing red text flash right next to your flight number. Canceled.
Oh, man. That is just the worst feeling.
It is. But it's worse because in exactly 10 minutes, 2,000 miles away, your father's funeral is going to begin.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that changes the stakes completely.
Right. Historically, this scenario is a recipe for a very specific, totally isolating kind of despair. You're trapped in this liminal space.
Surrounded by strangers buying, overpriced coffee.
Yes, exactly. While your family is gathering without you to navigate one of the heaviest moments of their lives, it's just a profound, helpless disconnect.
It really is. It's devastating.
But today, we're going to look at how that exact scenario is being radically rewritten. Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident expert.
Glad to be here. And this is a really fascinating topic we're getting into today.
It really is. Today, we are jumping into a deep dive on the architectural and psychological framework of remote memorial services. We're pulling from a collection of research and, well, basically architectural blueprints dealing with the digital horizon of mourning.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note right up front that our mission today isn't just to talk about, slapping webcams at funerals.
Wait, no, not at all.
Our mission is to really understand this massive hidden sociological shift. We're looking at how the very technology that we usually blame for isolating us is being reverse engineered.
Which is such a wild concept when you think about it.
It is. It's being used to preserve the communal, deeply intimate nature of grieving when the physical world just, refuses to cooperate.
It's a profound inversion of how we typically view digital infrastructure. I mean,
Right.
Usually we think of screens as barriers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We think of them as things that keep us apart.
But when you look at the framework we're exploring today, you realize we aren't just sending video signals over a network. We are actively trying to solve what the sources call the geography of grief.
The geography of grief, I love that term, because modern human migration patterns have just completely fractured the traditional mourning process.
Oh, completely. Like even a generation or two ago, the baseline assumption was that your entire community, your family, your friends, colleagues, they all lived within, maybe a 30-mile radius.
Yeah, exactly. A 30-mile radius of a central physical gathering place, like the local chapel or the community center.
Right. And today, that is a statistical anomaly.
It really is. I mean, people scatter across continents for college, for careers, for relationships.
So when a loss occurs, the logistical friction of gathering everyone back to a single geographic coordinate is just immense.
You're dealing with travel limits, maybe severe health concerns, financial constraints, or, like in your opening example, sudden global weather events.
Right, things that make in-person attendance mathematically impossible for a huge percentage of a person's network.
Exactly. The diaspora of the modern family is a real logistical hurdle.
Okay, so I get the logistical nightmare of trying to fly 50 people across the country with 3 days' notice. But let me challenge the core premise here right out of the gate.
Bring it on.
A screen is inherently flat. It's literally two-dimensional glass and plastic.
Right.
And when I think about the emotional gravity of a eulogy, it's heavy. Like it literally changes the air in the room.
It really does. There's a palpable shift.
So trying to capture that on a laptop or a phone feels inadequate. It feels a bit like trying to watch a thunderstorm on television versus actually standing outside in the rain.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Right. Because sure, you can see the lightning flash on the screen,
Yeah.
but you don't feel the sudden drop in barometric pressure in your chest. You don't feel the wind. How can a broadcast possibly recreate the atmospheric pressure of being in that physical room?
So it's a really compelling analogy, the thunderstorm one, but I actually think it misses the mark slightly regarding what is actually happening in these digital spaces.
Oh, really? How so?
Because you aren't trying to feel the weather of the room, so to speak. You aren't trying to simulate the smell of the floral arrangements or the, uncomfortable wood of the pews.
Okay, fair point.
The technology is not trying to perfectly recreate the physical space. Instead, it's trying to isolate and transmit the emotional data.
The emotional data. I like that phrase.
Yeah, and in a memorial service, the densest concentration of that emotional data is the eulogy. The research we're dissecting today places a massive emphasis on the eulogy as the absolute emotional heart of the gathering.
Because it's the moment where the stories are told.
Exactly.
But
Why is it the heart? Because the eulogy is the precise moment of intimate, vulnerable story sharing. It's the raw expression of love, the articulation of a life's impact. That is the anchor.
so you're saying the physical room is basically just a container and the eulogy is the actual payload.
Precisely. The goal of the live stream isn't to pretend you were in the room. The goal is to democratize access to that specific emotional peak.
To make sure everyone gets the payload, regardless of where they are.
Right. It's about stripping away the geographic barrier so that the story, the memory, the vulnerability can be received by the people who need it.
Which makes a lot of sense when you think about what mourning actually is.
Exactly. Because what makes mourning communal isn't necessarily sharing the same oxygen, it's the simultaneity of the experience.
The simultaneity. So experiencing it at the exact same time.
Yes. It is the fact that you, sitting in Terminal 4 at O'Hare, are hearing the exact same story about your father's eccentric sense of humor at the exact same second as your sister sitting in the front row of the chapel.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You're shedding a tear at the exact same punchline.
You're experiencing the emotional cadence of the grief simultaneously, and that synchronized emotional resonance is what preserves the communal nature of the event, regardless of the miles between you.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Because if that synchronized emotional resonance is actually going to work, the delivery mechanism has to be basically flawless.
Oh, absolutely. It can't just be a shaky cell phone video.
Right. You can't just send out a generic calendar invite with a standard video call link. When I look at the materials we're analyzing, they spend an enormous amount of time detailing the first critical step.
Which is the platform selection.
Yes, the selection and design of a dedicated memorial website with really deep video integration. They aren't just tossing up a stream. They're essentially architecting a digital chapel.
Architecting a digital chapel. That is the exact right way to look at it. They're building an architecture of digital solemnity.
Digital solemnity.
Yeah, because in the physical world, architecture dictates behavior and mindset. Think about it. When you walk into a traditional funeral home, you don't instantly lock eyes with the person giving the eulogy.
No, of course not. There's a whole process.
There is a spatial progression. You walk through the heavy front doors into a quiet lobby. You might take off your coat.
You approach a table and physically sign a guest book.
Exactly. You look at a series of photo boards that trigger memories. You pick up a printed program.
All of these small physical actions are cognitive cues.
Yes, they are gradually shifting your brain out of the frantic everyday mode of like traffic and running errands and preparing your mind to encounter grief.
That's like a decompression chamber for your brain.
A decompression chamber. That's a great way to put it. Now, translate that to the digital realm.
Right, because usually there is no decompression chamber on the internet.
Exactly. If you just click a raw video link from your email while you have 6 other tabs open, a spreadsheet, a news site, a shopping cart.
You're thrust instantly from the chaos of the internet into an incredibly vulnerable, intimate moment.
And the cognitive whiplash of that is immense. That is why the infrastructure we are looking at demands what the forces call a unified memorial experience.
I think of it like a theater's proscenium arch.
Oh, okay. Expand on that.
Well, if you put a grieving person in the middle of a busy city square and try to perform a solemn play, they're going to be totally overwhelmed by sensory input, the traffic, the pigeons, the sirens.
Right, they wouldn't be able to focus at all.
But the unified digital page acts as that arch. It narrows their cognitive field of vision exclusively to the tribute, blocking out the overwhelming fragmented noise of the broader internet.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, because when a person is grieving, their working memory and cognitive load are already severely compromised.
Trauma literally rewires how you process information in the moment.
It does. Trauma and grief biologically limit our ability to process complex, scattered information. So if the digital experience is fragmented, like if the family says, hey, here is the video link in this email, but the obituary is over on this newspaper site, and please go to this separate social media group to look at the photo album.
That sounds like a nightmare. It causes a spike in cortisol just thinking about it.
It becomes a frustrating, taxing, logistical puzzle right when the person is least equipped to solve it.
Which is why the unified platform is so crucial.
Yes. The psychological brilliance of the unified platform is that it embeds everything into a single, cohesive destination.
You just go to one URL.
One URL. The video player is embedded right there in the center. Below it is the biography. To the side is the digital guestbook and the photo gallery.
It acts as a singular anchor point.
Yes, and the language used in the interface design is deeply intentional, too.
Like what?
Well, you'll often see a dedicated section clearly labeled Live Memorial Service or Live Eulogy Reading.
So it's not just called, like, video stream.
Exactly. It isn't framed as just a stream. It is framed as an event you are attending. It gives the remote mourner a distinct sense of arrival.
Oh, I see. So you check the page, you see the countdown clock indicating the service begins in 10 minutes, and it mirrors that physical act of sitting in the pew.
Right, waiting for the ambient music to fade and the speaker to approach the podium. It artificially constructs the architectural boundaries of a chapel using code and user interface design.
But here is where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
Because you can design the most beautiful, psychologically soothing, perfectly coded digital chapel in the world.
True.
But if the underlying technical infrastructure collapses during the event, it's all for nothing.
It completely shatters the illusion.
If the microphone cuts out entirely during the most important story about how your parents met, that carefully constructed immersion is just broken.
It brings us to the unforgiving production of remembrance.
Unforgiving is right. The materials outline an incredibly strict technical baseline. We're talking high-definition video, reliable broadband, quality cameras, soft lighting, and meticulous audio capture.
It reads like a checklist for a live television broadcast.
It really does. Because that is exactly what it is, but with stakes that are arguably much higher than a standard broadcast.
Because you don't get a second take at a funeral.
Exactly. You can't just say, let's take it from the top. And what we are seeing is a massive shift in the death care industry to accommodate this.
Historically, funeral homes provided space, physical logistics, and transportation.
Right? Cars and rooms.
Now they are rapidly having to become AV production houses. Many are permanently wiring their chapels with high-end live streaming equipment.
While others are relying on families bringing in professional third-party services or even taking a highly sophisticated DIY approach using modern smartphones on stabilized tripods.
But the technical demands are rigid regardless of who is actually running the cables.
Okay, let me put you on the spot here.
All right, go for it.
Based on the mechanical breakdown of these services in our sources,
Yeah.
if you had to isolate the single most critical technical element, the one thing you absolutely cannot compromise on, what is it?
That's a great question.
Is it having pristine 4K resolution so you can see every detail of the floral arrangements, or is it something else?
Without a doubt, it is audio clarity.
Really? Audio over video?
It is not even a close competition. If the video feed degrades, if it drops from 4K down to a slightly grainy 720p, or even occasionally buffers.
The human brain can still track the visual narrative.
Right. You know who is standing at the podium. You understand the context of the room.
But if the audio is compromised,
If it is muffled, echoing, or cutting in and out, the emotional tether is instantly severed.
why is that? What is the mechanism there?
Yeah.
Why is audio so much more fragile than video when it comes to human emotion?
It comes down to where emotional vulnerability lives in human communication. Vulnerability doesn't just live in the words being said, it lives in the microfrequencies of the voice.
The microfrequencies, like the tone.
Exactly. It is the slight hesitation before a name is spoken. It is the breath taken to steady the nerves. It is the literal crack in the vocal cords when sadness overwhelms the speaker.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so true.
And that happens in a very specific frequency range, usually between 2 and 5 kilohertz.
Okay, so it's a measurable scientific thing.
Yes. Now, think about the architecture of a traditional religious or memorial space. High vaulted ceilings, stained glass, hard wooden pews, marble floors.
They are massive echo chambers.
Right. They were designed hundreds of years ago to make a single voice boom with authority across a crowd, long before amplification existed.
Exactly. They were built for authoritative projection, not for intimate recorded vulnerability.
So when a person speaks in that room, the sound waves bounce off every hard surface, creating a complex reverb.
Which sounds great if you're standing in the room.
But if you just set up a camera at the back of the room with a standard built-in microphone, that microphone captures all of that bouncing sound simultaneously.
It just becomes a mess of echoes.
It muddies those crucial emotional frequencies. The voice becomes a wash of noise. You lose the crack in the voice, the subtle intake of breath.
So how do you solve the physics of the room?
You basically bypass the room entirely. The technical manuals emphasize the absolute necessity of using direct audio feeds.
Like a lapel mic?
Yes. That means putting a wireless lapel microphone directly on the lapel of the person speaking, inches from their mouth, or routing the feed directly from the chapel's internal PA system straight into the broadcasting software.
You isolate the voice from the architecture.
Exactly. You capture the dry, pure signal of the speaker's voice. When you do that, the person sitting in Terminal 4 with their headphones on hears that subtle intake of breath perfectly.
It feels incredibly intimate. It bridges the physical distance instantly because the voice feels like it is inside their own head.
That makes total sense. You are essentially bringing the speaker right to the ear of the listener, bypassing the acoustic chaos of the physical room entirely.
And what about the visual side? If audio is the payload, what is the role of the camera and the lighting?
The role of the visuals is to be entirely invisible.
Invisible.
The guidelines were looking at stress, soft, natural lighting, and static, respectful camera placement. This is not about cinematic flair.
So no dramatic, sweeping crane shots or harsh theatrical spotlights.
Absolutely not. If the lighting casts a severe shadow across the speaker's face, or if the camera is constantly zooming and panning, it forces the remote viewer to become aware of the production.
Right. It breaks the fourth wall of grief.
Mm-hmm.
You start thinking about the camera operator instead of focusing on the eulogy.
Precisely. The visual production must establish a respectful atmosphere and then get out of its own way. It must provide a stable, clear window that allows the remote viewer to focus entirely on the emotional tone of the tribute without any technical friction.
It is an immense amount of pressure on families or funeral directors to get this right.
It really is. They're balancing profound, immediate grief with the cold, unforgiving mechanics of a live digital broadcast.
But let's assume they nail it. The camera is steady, the lighting is soft, the lapel mic is capturing crystal clear audio.
The stream goes live.
The stream goes live and the remote guests start arriving in this unified digital sanctuary.
And this is where the dynamic completely changes from a traditional funeral.
Right, because in a physical chapel, the guests file into the pews, they sit down, and they are completely silent. They're basically passive observers for the duration of the service.
But this digital space is built on interactive technology.
Exactly. It allows for a totally different kind of real-time participation.
You're referring to the interactive communication features integrated into these platforms.
Yes, the chat functionalities.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really interesting and, honestly, a little precarious.
Precarious is a good word for it.
The framework suggests having a space where remote participants can leave real-time messages, comments, or condolences right alongside the video player.
It's designed to recreate the sense of community, to let the family know who is watching.
But my immediate reaction is, how on earth do you balance the spontaneous, asynchronous, often chaotic nature of internet commenting with the solemn, sacred dignity of a funeral?
It's a very valid concern.
We all know what internet comment sections look like. Putting one next to a eulogy feels like playing with fire.
It is a fascinating collision of two completely different sets of behavioral norms. We have to look at how human behavior is actually regulated.
Okay, walk me through that.
In a physical chapel, social norms are implicitly understood, and they are enforced by spatial proximity.
All right, you're sitting right next to someone.
The architecture of the room, the dim lighting, the physical presence of elders, the silence of the people sitting shoulder to shoulder with you, all of these exert a massive, unspoken social pressure.
You know to whisper. You know to silence your phone. You know to wait until the reception to share a funny anecdote.
Exactly. The physical environment does the regulating for you.
But a digital text box does not possess any of those implicit physical boundaries.
None at all. A person sitting alone in their living room watching the stream might suddenly remember a hilarious story about the deceased and decide to type it out and hit send right in the middle of a very somber prayer.
Oh, yikes. Yeah.
Or an older relative might struggle with the keyboard and accidentally type a string of nonsensical characters.
Or, in the worst-case scenario, an uninvited individual could gain access and post something actively disruptive.
So how do you enforce the architecture of silence and respect in a space made of code?
Right. How do you do that?
Through deliberate moderation tools. The systems we are exploring do not just open a free-for-all chat room. They rely heavily on a designated moderator.
A designated moderator. That's a role that has no exact equivalent in a traditional funeral.
None. The moderator is essentially a digital grief counselor crossed with a bouncer, but operating with extreme invisibility and compassion.
How did that actually work in practice, like mechanically?
It utilizes latency and curation. When a remote viewer types a message of condolence and hits submit, that message does not instantly appear on the public feed.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, it is routed first to the moderator's dashboard. The moderator, who's usually a trusted friend or a professional provided by the service, reads the message.
So they have time to vet it.
Exactly. They ensure it is appropriate, respectful, and technologically coherent. Only after they approve it does it populate on the screen next to the video player.
So they are actively manually curating the emotional environment in real time.
Yes. They are substituting the implicit social pressure of the physical room with explicit, invisible, digital curation.
And the result, when managed correctly, must be incredibly moving.
It really is. Imagine the immediate family later reviewing the broadcast or glancing at a monitor in the physical space. They don't hear the disruptive murmur of chatter.
Instead, they see a silent, continuous, curated stream of loving memories, shared grief, and condolences quietly populating the screen.
They can feel the immense presence and support of this massive digital congregation surrounding them without any of the physical noise that would shatter the solemnity of the physical chapel.
It's a beautiful concept. It's almost like having the ability to read the supportive thoughts of everyone sitting in the room, filtered for purity.
That's a great way to think about it.
But that brings us to an even larger paradigm shift. Everything we've talked about so far, the audio, the video, the chat, is focused on the live event, the synchronicity.
The real-time experience.
Right. But once the officiant says the final words and the camera feed is cut, the event doesn't actually end anymore.
And this might be the most staggering evolution we are covering today.
We are talking about the lifespan of the event itself escaping the bounds of time.
You are touching on the concept of archiving the impermanent. This is a fundamental restructuring of how human beings interact with mourning.
Think about human history for a second. For thousands of years, a funeral was an entirely fleeting, transient phenomenon.
Ephemeral.
It was an arrangement of words spoken exactly once into the air of a specific room. If you were not in that room, those words were lost to you forever.
You might get a secondhand summary later, but the raw emotion of the moment evaporated the second the service ended.
Exactly. But what we're looking at now is the transformation of that fleeting moment into a permanent, living, multimedia documentary.
These platforms automatically capture the high-definition broadcast and permanently anchor it within that unified digital memorial archive we discussed earlier.
To understand the gravity of this, we have to look at the sociology of memory.
Memory is notoriously unreliable, especially memory forged in the crucible of intense grief.
Right, because the immediate family sitting in the front row of a funeral is often in a state of clinical shock.
They are processing logistics, they are greeting hundreds of people, they are enduring a massive emotional toll. Ask them a week later what was actually said during the eulogy, and they often cannot recall the specifics.
They remember the feeling of the day, but the actual words are just a blur.
Precisely. By archiving the broadcast, the platform preserves the emotional data for a time when the family actually has the cognitive capacity to receive it.
That is such a vital point.
The literature notes that family members frequently return to these digital archives months or even years later.
They can sit in the quiet of their own home, long after the chaotic logistics of the funeral are over, press play, and truly listen to the profound reflections and stories shared about their loved one.
The emotional significance of the tribute is preserved and held safely until they are ready for it.
It is literally a safety net for memory.
It really is.
But the archive doesn't just act as a recording device for the people who are physically at the podium. This is the part of the framework that really blew my mind.
Oh, the pre-recorded tributes.
Yes, the digital platform actively expands the chorus of voices allowed to participate. The traditional model of a funeral is incredibly restrictive.
Very much so. Usually you only have an hour.
That means maybe 3 or 4 people are selected to speak. And realistically, those people are chosen based on physical proximity and family hierarchy.
Right. The physical reality of the traditional funeral inherently limits the narrative scope of the person's life. If only the local immediate family speaks, you only get the local immediate family's perspective of who that person was.
Exactly. But the digital archive completely upends that bottleneck. These platforms allow for the submission of pre-recorded voice and video tributes from remote participants.
Think about the implications of that.
You could have a cousin living in a different hemisphere, or an old college roommate who is currently too ill to travel, or a former colleague stationed overseas.
They cannot physically walk up to the wooden podium in the chapel.
But they can sit down in front of their webcam, record a 5-minute story about a completely different facet of the deceased's life, and upload it directly into the digital sanctuary.
It completely democratizes the act of eulogizing. It removes the geographical and temporal barriers to contributing to the historical record of a life.
And as the research highlights, the result is a vastly fuller, more nuanced, multidimensional portrait of the individual.
You aren't just getting the perspective of the child or the spouse. You are aggregating the lived experiences of an entire global network.
When you combine these pre-recorded videos with digitized photo galleries spanning decades of childhood memories, scanned letters, and the recorded live stream, the digital archive becomes a comprehensive historical document.
It achieves a level of narrative depth that a single, one-hour physical service could never possibly accommodate.
It is an incredibly powerful evolution. We're moving from a single physical snapshot of grief to a massive, crowdsourced digital tapestry of a human life.
A digital tapestry. I like that.
But, I do want to ground us for a second.
Okay, let's ground it.
All of these digital features, the carefully moderated chat rooms, the high-definition permanent archives, the uploaded pre-recorded videos, they exist in the ether.
They live on servers.
Right. Meanwhile, back in the physical world, there was still a very tangible physical reality occurring. There is a casket or an urn. There are floral arrangements. There are people sitting in physical wooden pews holding printed paper
The
programs.
physical anchors are still there.
How do we bridge these two realities? If you have half your congregation sitting in a room in Chicago and the other half dispersed across 20 different time zones interacting with the digital tapestry, how do you connect them so it feels like one unified event?
That bridging is a critical challenge in modern experiential design. You cannot have the physical attendees feeling completely disconnected from the digital reality.
Right, nor can the digital attendees feel like secondary, forgotten participants.
The solution lies in routing the physical demographics to the digital environment using tangible anchors.
Tangible anchors. And the materials mention a very simple but profound tool for this.
The QR codes.
Yes, the integration of QR codes into the physical memorial materials. Organizations specialize in designing printed funeral programs, the actual paper booklets you are handed when you walk through the door of the chapel, that serve as physical keys to the digital space.
It is an elegant piece of routing. A guest sitting in the physical pew, perhaps waiting for the service to begin, can pull out their smartphone.
They scan the QR code printed on the back of the physical paper program.
And instantly, they are routed to the global digital sanctuary. Suddenly, the person in the physical room is looking at the same interface as the person sitting in Terminal 4.
They can read the curated condolences coming in from around the world. They can view the pre-recorded video from the college roommate halfway across the globe.
It physically links the paper in their hand to the global cloud. The physical room and the digital network collapse into a single shared experience.
And crucially, that bridge must be heavily protected, because with the digitized vulnerability, you introduce the risk of exposure.
Absolutely. Security is paramount.
The frameworks we are analyzing place a massive emphasis on security and privacy. These are not public broadcasts.
No, the architecture relies on password-protected gateways and secure, unlisted links.
It ensures that only invited, permitted guests can cross that digital bridge, protecting the family's vulnerability from the broader public internet.
Security is the foundation of trust in these spaces. And alongside security, there is a deep focus on accessibility, which I think is just as vital.
The technology doesn't just connect people geographically. It connects people across physical limitations.
Yes, the integration of automated, real-time closed captions for viewers with hearing difficulties is a prime example.
Think about being in a physical chapel with poor acoustics. A hard-of-hearing relative might sit through an entire eulogy and catch only fragments of sentences.
By utilizing real-time digital transcription on the live stream, that barrier is removed. It is a further democratizing of the experience.
And it expands into cultural preservation as well. I was fascinated by the data showing how these networks are preserving highly specific spiritual and cultural traditions on a global scale.
It is a vital function. Many cultures have specific liturgical readings, indigenous rituals, or rhythmic hymns that are essential to the transition of mourning.
In the past, if you lived outside the geographic hub of your culture, you simply missed out on participating in those grounding rituals.
Now, high-fidelity streaming allows relatives thousands of miles away to hear the exact cadence of a traditional chant or witness a specific ceremonial act. It preserves cultural cohesion across the diaspora.
I love that aspect of it. It feels deeply grounding. But I have to admit, as much as I appreciate the lapel mics and the QR codes and the secure servers, I start to get a little apprehensive when the research turns its eye toward the horizon.
You mean the future tech section?
Yes. When we start looking at the future of this technology, the materials we are reviewing mention that as spatial computing and bandwidth evolve, we are going to see the rise of immersive virtual memorial spaces and augmented reality tributes.
Right, entering the realm of AR.
Now, I am a tech enthusiast. I love innovation. But does an augmented reality tribute at a funeral run the risk of completely overshadowing the actual human being we are mourning?
That's a fair question.
At what point does the technology become a gimmick that distracts from the raw human reality of death?
It is a completely valid apprehension, and it touches on a phenomenon known as the uncanny valley.
The uncanny valley, right? Where things look almost human but not quite, and it's just creepy.
Exactly. When technology tries too hard to simulate human presence, like projecting a holographic avatar of the deceased, it often triggers revulsion rather than comfort. It feels unnatural.
It just feels wrong.
But what is fascinating about the trajectory outlined in this research is how it actively avoids that trap. It addresses your exact anxiety by constantly returning to its concluding thesis.
Wait,
That despite all technological advancements, the core purpose of the memorial remains entirely unchanged.
the purpose is to honor a life lived and to provide comfort to the people left behind.
Exactly. The technology is a servant to that purpose. It is not the master. If we rigorously analyze the framework's mention of enhanced multimedia storytelling and augmented reality, it is not proposing digital ghosts.
So no holograms giving their own eulogy.
Thankfully, no. It is proposing spatial overlay. Think about how human memory works. It is often tied to physical locations.
Okay, walk me through what an augmented reality tribute actually looks like in practice without being a gimmick.
Imagine it is a year after the funeral. You are visiting the physical gravesite or a memorial bench in a park dedicated to your loved one. It is a quiet, physical space.
Okay, I'm there.
You take out your phone or your spatial computing glasses. The technology uses geolocation to recognize where you're standing. It then accesses that permanent, unified digital archive we discussed earlier.
The digital tapestry.
Right. But instead of displaying it on a flat web page, it maps that data onto the physical world around you.
Oh, wow.
Through your screen, you see a beautifully curated, three-dimensional gallery of your loved one's photography floating gently in the space next to the physical headstone.
That's incredible.
You select a specific memory, and the pristine lapel-mic audio of the eulogy given a year ago begins to play softly in your headphones.
Wow. Okay, when you frame it as an overlay rather than a replacement, it shifts entirely.
It does.
You aren't trying to bring the person back to life digitally. You are bringing the archive of their memory into the physical space where you go to reflect.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the digital and physical bridge. It proves that the technology is serving humanity's ancient, fundamental need to remember.
Whether we are talking about a simple wireless microphone solving the acoustic bounce of a cathedral,
Or a coded chat interface acting as a silent emotional conduit.
or a future spatial overlay mapping a digital tapestry onto a physical gravesite, the mechanism is the same. The goal is simply to tell the story of a life with as much fidelity as possible.
And to ensure that the story can be witnessed by the people who need to hear it most, regardless of where they are standing on the earth.
It's profound. The technology isn't replacing the human connection, it is ruthlessly optimizing the delivery of it. We have covered an incredible amount of conceptual ground today.
We really have.
We started by looking at the harsh reality of modern migration and how the geography of grief isolates us. We walked through the meticulous psychological engineering required to build a unified digital sanctuary that lowers cognitive load.
The decompression chamber.
Right. We dove deep into the physics of sound and why isolating vocal frequencies is the key to transmitting vulnerability across a network. We analyzed the sociological tension of digital congregations and how latency and curation replaced the physical architecture of silence.
And finally, we explored the staggering shift from transient synchronous mourning to permanent asynchronous crowdsourced digital legacies.
And how augmented reality might one day map those legacies onto our physical world. For you, the listener, I hope this deep dive fundamentally reshapes how you view the intersection of technology and sorrow.
Me too.
It provides a profound, tangible comfort to know that if you are ever that person sitting in Terminal 4, grounded by a storm or separated by illness, or simply trapped by the logistics of modern life, You are no longer banished to the periphery of your family's grief.
You are not truly absent.
The digital horizon has been bent to ensure you can still meaningfully, deeply participate in the final farewell.
I completely agree. The ultimate synthesis of everything we have explored today is that digital infrastructure, when designed with profound compassion and an understanding of human psychology, does not isolate us. It simply extends the reach of our empathy.
It guarantees that the spoken honors, the tears, and the shared reflections of a life well lived remain clear, dignified, and enduring, long after the physical gathering has concluded.
Enduring for a very long time.
Enduring not just for us, but for the future. And that brings me to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with today, building on this concept of the permanent digital archive.
I'm intrigued.
I want you to project this technology forward. Imagine your great-great-grandchildren, a century from now.
Wow.
People whose faces you will never see, living in a world we cannot even comprehend. Thanks to the digital memorial architecture we have been unpacking today, their connection to their ancestry is going to be fundamentally different than ours.
It really is. They won't just have names on a page.
They won't just look at a name scrawled on a dusty genealogical chart. They won't just stare at a faded, silent, two-dimensional photograph and try to guess who you were.
They're going to have the whole archive.
They are going to be able to log in. They're going to press play. They will hear the acoustics of the room. They will see the specific way your friends smiled.
He'll hear the exact tone of voice.
They will hear the exact frequencies of laughter and the subtle cracks of sorrow in the voices of the people who knew you best, spoken on the exact day you were laid to rest.
That is a very powerful thought.
It forces a deeply personal question. When that digital bridge is finally built across a century of time, what kind of stories, what kind of eulogy would you want waiting in that archive for someone you will never meet?
Give you a lot to think about.
It certainly does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.